Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Inga Cotton. I'm the founder and executive director of San Antonio Charter Moms, and these are Charter Moms Chats, where we've been making live videos to help parents learn what they need to know to keep their kids happy and learning and safe during the pandemic. And sometimes we talk about at-home learning activities. Sometimes we talk about what's happening in the news. And lately, we've been meeting one-on-one with charter school leaders. And I'm so excited today. We're featuring Lighthouse Public Schools, which we wrote our first blog post about them on the blog today. The link to that blog post is in the description of the video, and I really encourage you to read it because it has fun pictures from the campus of like student artwork, actually, which you see behind Dr. Mills's head. He has some student artwork there. And it's got, the blog post has links and just, dates and important stuff. But I'm really grateful that we get to talk to Dr. Mills today and hear from him about how the school is experiencing a renewal, and they're reinforcing their mission and their vision. And okay, so I want to introduce Dr. Mills a little bit. So Donald Mills he's the superintendent of Lighthouse Public Schools, and you joined them in 2019. Is that right?
Yes, I came on last July.
Okay, and so I when I met Dr. Mills, it was at one of the school discovery events, right? Was it down at Trudeau's Village?
It was at Trudeau's Village last spring.
Yeah. So I got to meet him before the pandemic, but I still haven't been to the campus yet. That's on my wish list. But he's got experience helping the students who need the most care and love. And so he worked at Meadowland Charter District, which is up in Bernie. It's part of Roy Moss Youth Alternatives. And we realized we had a lot of mutual friends because he's been working as a trainer and a mentor to charter school leaders, some of whom we've talked to on Charter Moms Chats before, who are now, leaders of their own charter schools. But so we're talking to the OG, the trainer here. So thank you so much, Dr. Mills, for being on Charter Moms Chats to talk about Lighthouse Public Schools. So the school opened in, was it 2003? Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. We are an original Generation 7 charter. The application was written by Dr. Doug Killian and was approved in 2002. And the first year of opening was the fall of 2003.
Yeah, wow. So, but it's a school that's been sort of overlooked. We in the Charter Moms group on Facebook, a few people will kind of come across it and ask about it, but until recently, I haven't had that much information to share. So, but I got to meet some board members at a conference a couple years ago, and I could tell there was, things were getting shaken up. There was change happening, and I'm really excited about how the school is growing and the kind of programs that you're offering to students. So I was wondering if you could kind of talk about like what is the mission, the vision, and how is that experiencing a period of growth now?
Sure. So like I said, we opened up in the fall of 2003. I like to tease everyone and say we're the best kept secret on the West Side because it is a real traditional grassroots charter school. It really has kind of a ma-pa feel to it, if you will, in that when TEA approved charters in 1995, the goal of that, as the commissioner at the time, was to create a local neighborhood school. And so I try to keep that focus as we go through now and how we're revitalizing some of the services we provide and the type of students that we serve. We are truly your neighborhood charter school. Our classroom sizes are pretty small. Even pre-COVID, we were pretty small in that we had 13 to 14 students in a classroom to one certified teacher. And so we keep them pretty small like that because we do like the coziness of being able to meet the academic needs of our students, because so many come to us with some achievement gaps in their prior academic experiences. Some have not had the most positive academic experience. A lot of our students come from some type of background or setting where they may have been traumatized. And so being able to meet those social emotional needs alongside their academic needs is a great feeling. We are very small. Right now we're sitting right under 350 students, which isn't typical for schools that have been around as long as we have. But one of our main missions and vision is really to reach and teach the whole child.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I'm excited to see, a school that maybe, yeah, like you said, best kept secret, But as more families can find out about it, maybe they'll find out that it's the right fit for their children, and they can enjoy some of the benefits of that closeness and having, close interaction between teachers and students.
Well, I think in today's atmosphere, we spend so much time worried about A through F accountability, financial first ratings, federal accountability. We just want to teach kids. We want to meet their needs where they are. To give you a prime example of how crazy I am as a superintendent and meeting their needs, we had a small group of parents that just were not happy with the local high school where their students were because they left us last year as 8th graders. Last week, we opened up high school. We have 4 freshmen, and we have plans in the future of just expanding that and growing that. We have no intention of being a charter organization or system that gets so big that we forget the vision that we had and the mission that we want to serve to our neighborhood. And so really focusing on the academic needs of the students, creating programs that they want to attend, creating programs that they want and need for their future goals. Our goal, as I tell my educators, is we want to start educating kids for careers that haven't even been invented yet. We don't even know what those are, but our kids do. And so we went ahead and put our neck out there and added the high school, totally unaware of what we may be headed towards and what pathway we may be going down. But the board supported my decision. The board has encouraged the expansion and growth here on this property and to fill this school. And so we're going to move forward, Ingrid, and do anything we have to do to make sure that happens, because our kids in this neighborhood, they need the services that we provide. And so we'll continue to create those programs and create a service model that meet their needs.
Yeah. Do you know yet if those students they'll be able to stay for 10th grade next year? Is that the plan?
I can already tell you that we're getting some phone calls of saying, when are you going to add next grade levels? We will take that day by day, phone call by phone call. I just need to get to Christmas break, right? It's doing what we have to do for kids. And, you mentioned the piece of art behind me. Last year when I got here, we didn't have an art program like this that was so robust for all grade levels. And this work was created off of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper as a vision from one of the kids. And the art teacher saw that vision and transferred that vision to that palette behind me. That's what we want to do in every academic area, every social emotional area, and every possible area that we can for kids, is take their vision and help guide them to bring that vision to fruition through our actions today so they can have a brighter future tomorrow. We know we are a school-wide Title I program, and we face a lot of barriers and roadblocks. We're trying to make those stumbling blocks stepping stones for every child that comes to our door. Meeting the whole need of the kid means not just A, B, C, and 1, 2, 3. So we are a restorative practice campus, meaning in-school suspension doesn't exist here. We talk about behaviors, and we talk about harm, and what are ways that we can correct that harm and bring the whole child to the surface, because we all have good days. We all have bad days. It's how we handle all of those days that make us who and what we are. And so that's a big piece of our program, is making sure that we do what is best for like children. Does it always line up to the student code of conduct? Does it always line up to what we think might, should, or could happen? Not always, but we do make decisions that's best for children. And so we will be adding more and more content areas, more and more grade levels, and more service models as the need arises. So for me to really be able to tell your audience or our parents or even the Texas Education Agency all of that as a black and white plan right now, not possible, because I don't always have the vision. We want to embrace the kids' vision. And so whatever that comes with, that's what we'll do.
Yeah, so that's a beautiful thing to be, it takes a certain level of humility to say, okay, parent community, okay, families, okay, students, what matters to you, and to look at look at their needs, look at the needs of that, that part of town, and and be there for them. Because if you're trying to follow a rigid plan or meet a certain standard, that's if that's not what's best for the kids, that's not why you go to work each day.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, and I think one of the things that when I look around my faculty and staff, and including myself, I'm the first person to tell the students, hey, I was in special ed. I was a product of that program. I rode the little yellow bus. I don't think that in today's society, we should be using shame towards people in their actions or behaviors, or in some of the situations that they didn't create for themselves. Life is what it is. What we want are students that have some resiliency and grit, that they can handle all of those type of things and still lead productive, positive lives. And I'm a proof of that. My mom and dad had to work diligently to ensure that I had some tutoring and some extra reading help. But now sitting here with 8 college degrees, I did that because I had a caring teacher. My dissertation was dedicated to Miss Edna Watkins. She was my 4th grade teacher. And she told me I could be anything I wanted to be. I could do anything I wanted to do. And that's what I talk to kids about. And so we want to be that school. C, average is okay. There's nothing wrong with being average. Sometimes we want to focus too much on the things that really don't matter. And here, what matters to us are kids. And we want to make sure that we serve kids to the best of our ability and give them the opportunity to have the best future they want for themselves. Today, we had a training from the Region 20 Education Service Center, and I was so proud that I could ask out in front of everyone, schools exist for 2 reasons, and my teachers were able to echo teaching and learning. And that's what this school is about. We come every day to teach, and we hope we leave every afternoon that we've learned. And so when we stop doing that's the day I'll turn off the lights and lock the door. But until that time comes, it's teaching and learning, and that's about teachers and kids.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to circle back to a couple of things you mentioned. One is that you talked about, like adding high school, and I think part of that also is, as you have older students, right? I mean, already with the middle school students, but as you have older students, that thinking about what they're going to do after they graduate, becomes more of an issue. And you mentioned preparing students for jobs that may not exist yet. But to some extent, you do have, CTE, like career technical education as part of the program. And so if you could kind of elaborate more on that, like sort of like what do you have now and what do you see the demand being from the community of like the older students and their families?
Sure. So as we're creating this program, we're getting the students involved. We want their voice. So right now, just sitting down and talking to the kids, we've yesterday had a meeting to create the 16 pathways of career tech education and asking the students to take some assessments to say, what do you really want to be when you grow up? And that's easy for us to say because we're already mature adults. But when you're a 13, 14, 15-year-old, it's not so easy. So sometimes taking an assessment and doing a curiosity questionnaire or something of that nature helps pinpoint that. So currently we're offering 9 CTE pathways, like foundation courses, because we were transitioning from 8th grade to 9th grade. And so right now we have one that's doing a graphic design class. We do have an amazing art teacher. And so we're venturing down that pathway now because Dr. Mills jumped the gun and said, we're going to start high school now to our students. And so we've added those type of things, and we're working with the Region 20 Education Service Center to find out what options we have out there, and then just starting to explore our community and neighborhood. We're not too far from Lackland, who has a lot of access for us because we have some board members that are retired from there. And so we're just going to get any community-based organization and entity involved that we can to meet the needs of our kids. We know that hospitality industry is large in San Antonio, so we have one of the students working on that career pathway as well. So if that means we have to go down to the Pearl and figure out how to involve culinary arts or St. Philip's University or Northwest Vista, I'm working on the paperwork right now for all those articulation agreements. But we are going to create the program to meet their needs. And so when I say that, we don't have everything in place right now, to be transparent and honest, but we'll get it done, whatever it takes. Because when you're small like we are and have the uniqueness of being a small entity, you can make that creativity happen for a student. And so I've challenged my leadership team of, we're not going to just think out of the box. We're going to do what it takes to create a new box, because this is a journey that some of us have never been on. And so we're going to find out what the end of the pathway looks like. And so and I am also the type of leader that if we have a student that comes, I may have to say, hey, we're going to have you here half a day, and then we're going to take you to another place for another half a day. In my last school, when we opened that in 2008, as you mentioned, it was a residential treatment center school. People thought I was crazy and said that the school will never meet accountability because you're anywhere between 40 and 70% special ed, high emotional distress kids because they live on the property. And we were one of the top charter schools in Texas. Our special ed students passed and everything. That was because we were innovative. That was because we were a risk taker. I'm going to replicate that here. It's not the same model. I don't know what the model may be, but whatever we need to do and whatever risk we need to take, we're going to take, because it's about kids. And that's what charter school and innovative charter schools do is, and if you look at the law back in 1995, that was the birthplace of the charter system in Texas. And it was about being innovative and giving school choice, options, a voice for parents, advocacy for education. And we're going to do all of those things, and we already are doing it. So I'm really excited about expanding who and what we are, growing alongside our students and our parents, and expanding our educational community here on the West Side.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about innovation and flexibility and like listening to what the community is asking for, that's really exciting to me. And I hope that the parents who are listening to this and reading the blog post are realizing that this is an opportunity for families to join the Lighthouse Public Schools community and have a say in shaping that, or if they have their own connections in the community that they can bring to it. That's sort of a downside of if you enroll your kids in a school with an established model, and then you show up as that PTA parent, and you're like, what about this? And they're like, well, no, we don't do that here. It can be a little disappointing, but but at a smaller school, then there's that flexibility.
And I agree with you, Inga. It could be so disappointing. So let me give you another example. And this is what happens when you have 30 years of experience of public service in education. You have too many stories. I remember when I was a high school principal and my PEAMS coordinator came in and said, well, the student wants to take Japanese and we don't offer Japanese. And I was like, okay, well, why can't we offer Japanese? So it's kind of asking the question on the reverse end. It's not about what we don't have. It's about the blessing of what we do have. And so finding out why couldn't we offer? So I stuck my neck out, and for 2 years, we offered Japanese to this young man. He was the only student in a Japanese class. It was 100% online. Back in that day, Rosetta Stone had just come out. And so I bought Rosetta Stone for the student, one student. And lo and behold, where did he go to school for university? Tokyo, Japan. And he spent 4 years in Japan and now lives out in Burning, Texas, and speaks not one dialect of the Japanese language, but actually both dialects. It's when we, as adults, don't step forward to face the resiliency that children have, we lose our own. And I just won't do that for kids. When I do that, it's time to go to the house, get under my quilt, and call it done. So in the meantime, you just have to do what you have to do. And so if there's a pathway that we can do it within the Texas Education Code, meet the credit needs of the child, get them a high school diploma, and get them on their way for their future, we're going to do that. One of the things Krista McAuliffe, a famous quote she's known for, was she's going to shoot for the moon, and even if she doesn't land on the moon, she'd land among the stars. If we just make it to the stars, that could be a good thing for some kids. But I bet you one day we're going to hit the moon with one of the others. And so that faith and belief in children is what keeps me going. And so as long as I'm the superintendent here, we're going to keep that focus on those kids and their future.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to share, we're getting some really beautiful comments. I want to share some of these with you so you can see what people are saying as they watch the video. So Melanie is a blogger friend of mine. She's impressed with the small class size. So that's a good feature. So Sonia Brandon is a pre-K parent. So yeah, that's important to mention is that y'all do have it's right now it's pre-K 4, right?
Well, actually, when we came on last year when I came on as superintendent, I didn't think we were doing enough for pre-K4. So we actually have a pre-K3 program as well.
Oh,
So
okay, I need to update the blog post.
Yeah, so we have a full day program for pre-K3 and pre-K4. And because of some of the, some students show a little bit more giftedness than others, some need a little bit more basic instruction. We incorporated some of our 3-year-olds into our 4-year-old program because they were a tad bit advanced and doing well. And so we do have 3 and 4 year for a full day.
Okay. Well, I will update the blog post for that then. That's because pre-K3 at charter schools is still fairly rare. So more often to find pre-K4. That's a question we get a lot in the group. Let's see. So is so more encouragement.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that.
So, thank you, Dr. Mills, for putting our student first. And then you have one of your board members. Isn't that great?
That is great.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's probably Mr. Aguillon.
Oh, actually, it's Dora Woodruff Snedeker.
Oh, Dora, yes. Hi, Miss Snedeker. Nice to see you on.
But yes, I know Mr. Aguillon. He's a very dynamic person. He's like someone you can't say no to.
You know what? That's the thing that keeps Lighthouse where it is that we have an amazing board, and all 5 of our board members are just as aggressive about educating children as I am. And so they have to put up with my craziness, and then the teachers have to put up with it. But it's with the best of intentions to educate children. And so we're very fortunate that we have 5 amazing board members, like you said.
Oh, Dora says hi. I think she appreciated the shout out. It's fun. Yeah. So I want to, I was wondering if you could talk more about the, about restorative practices and, okay, like the education, like, and then sort of the character curriculum and social emotional learning. Because I think this is something where people, maybe they hear the term, but they're not sure what it means. And right. So I think how I've had it explained to me is like, it could be a matter of bringing together the student who feels wronged with the person who might otherwise have gotten suspended or expelled, but bring them together to talk to each other and recognize what the harm was so that they can learn from that and maybe make a different choice in the future. Am I on the right track?
I think you're on the right track, and I think you're the next best spokesperson for restorative justice, restorative practice. And that's my lens exactly. And so while we are discovering and growing with this, since it is new to Lighthouse, since I've only been here a year, it's about removing shame and removing harm and removing consequences. There's always natural consequences to bad decision making and harm doing, but does that have to be suspension or expulsion? No. And sometimes the best education for everyone is to bring both of those parties together and talk through the process of how did you harm me? Because some people don't know what damage or what trauma their harm can cause to another person. And if I don't ever have the chance to say I'm sorry or take ownership of my wrongdoing, I could continue harming people unintentionally or even unknowingly. And so restorative is removing that label of always saying there has to be a disciplinary outcome or punishment on the back end of wrongdoing. And that's one of our goals, is to educate children, and the best place to educate them is in school and in classrooms. But if I'm suspending the wrongdoer, then how are they getting an education? How is that serving the community at large? And so restorative is being able to restore both the harm that was done to the one and the harm that was really done by the wrongdoer, that they're unaware that they're causing harm for themselves. And pulling together the community at large in a classroom, in a hallway, in a gym, in the cafeteria, wherever, so we can all address what was harmed and correct it. It's not always an easy concept. Human nature, we like to shame people. And sometimes that use of shame, the best use of shame is me shaming myself that I did something wrong and trying to correct it, to go to you and say, I'm sorry, or I didn't mean to. But the bigger picture is me having a better understanding of where you're coming from, how your feelings were hurt, what was your opinion or thoughts about the situation. And so restorative practice takes all of that into account and bringing all parties of the community together, because we have to get along in the future. We have to go through life with things that we disagree with. We have to work with people we may not always agree with or like. But how can we do that to be honest with our best self, to show up authentically with each other, so I can get to know you and you can get to know me and we can work together?
Yeah, that's something that, like even as an adult, I'm still learning, learning how to listen. And then also, there's so much division in society, and where these sort of these rivalries, or sort of, well, tag you're it. And like, I put a lot of thought into cultivating a positive, supportive community in our online group. But it's really hard because, sometimes people kind of hide behind the computer and do harsh things. And, it's an ongoing learning experience for me. And, but really, like, one of the things I love about, doing what I do, which is learning about schools, is like, I learn, some of the best things about each school's culture, and then I get to incorporate that into how I live my life. And it's been a great learning journey for me. And so hearing you describe restorative practice, it makes me think about, like, wow, how could I bring restorative practice to our online community? Because there's, parents care very deeply about getting the right education for their children. And sometimes they come with strong opinions, right? About, like, how, right, like how to have consequences for if a child misbehaves. But we have to think about, in the long term, like, how do we have them be independent adults who are whole, and who, like, trust their own emotions and can kind of correct themselves if they see what consequence their behavior has on someone else, right? So if they're carrying people who are aware of what's happening around them, they will tend to choose the right actions.
I so agree with you. As a 53-year-old man, I one of the biggest life lessons I had was in college, and I had made a bad decision. And one of my college professors, who I love to death and I'm still very close to today, had to not allow me to participate in an activity that I really wanted to be a participant of. And the next semester, she called me into her office and we talked about the situation. To me, that was the seed of restorative practice being placed in my heart and soul, in that she led by example of what it means to still tell me she loved me, she respected me, and she wanted to have a relationship with me. I just did something I shouldn't have done, and there needed to be a natural consequence for it. And so, it's those type of stories that we really don't reflect on, and we don't spend time on them because we get so busy in our daily life. But we've got to slow down and share that with children at the ages that we serve now, because if we don't, they're going to be a 53-year-old one day reflecting on something that may happen to them in 6th or 7th or 8th grade and finally make the connection. And we always say, hindsight's 40/40. If I knew everything I knew now back when I was a teenager, wow, what a life I would have had. But it is sharing those stories with children today and not being embarrassed about it, because we all experience those things. But it's how we can help one another. The celebration is, at the end of the day, we're one community. I still have you, you still have me, and together we can create our next future.
Yeah, it's like you said, about it's learning and teaching, and that's happening every day.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to be sure, before we close out the video, that we talk about the specifics, the details. But before we transition to that, are there things about sort of like change and growth at Lighthouse that you want to share with the audience? Are there any more stories? Because I love your stories. Like, don't stop. They're great.
No, I know time's of the essence. Well, I just want to encourage families to check us out, give us a chance, come grow with us. We are your neighborhood school. When we talk about educating the whole child, we really mean that. We brought on a social worker to do our community engagement and outreach, not so much for marketing and media purposes, but to help our families We know we're on a side of town that has needs. We've had not one, but two food bank truck distributions here at the campus, because when I came on, I noticed a lot of our students had other needs that weren't being met other places. So I felt like if we're really going to be a lighthouse, let's be that lighthouse. Let's get in the community, roll up our sleeves and work. Every teacher showed up and helped volunteer to unload the trucks and load cars. And so for both of those, we fed almost 200 families each time, the Friday before Thanksgiving and back in October. The other piece is our adult basic ed. We're growing those classes. I've put out there about teaching ESL classes, adult basic ed classes, GED classes, and if necessary, citizenship courses. I did that way back in the 80s and 90s, and it was so rewarding to be able to help future Americans learn English, get a GED, or to become a citizen. That is what our Constitution, and that's what America is all about. And so what better way to do that than to support our children and our students by helping their families? And you know, the network of schools work in the pathway of public education is difficult. And so doing some of those adult classes so they can understand a STAR report. What is a graduation plan? What do you mean we got to start planning now for financial aid for 4 years down the road? All of that stuff that many of us were privileged to have and blessed to have people that knew about it. Our kids don't have that. And so we're trying to get the families involved now, so when they do get through high school, they're ready to go.
Yeah. Those are, you know, I'm glad I asked you to fill in those other details. There's every time I talk to you, I found out about more things that are happening at Lighthouse Public Schools. And so one thing, I guess I'll sort of make an analogy. I guess I feel like I need to get you one of those T-shirts that says "I void warranties," because it's almost like maker culture, right? Because I think some people, it's like, oh, this is the school, and it's like in this box, in this container, and there's machines inside. But I feel like you're the kind of person who just like rips the cover off and starts like adding gears and putting duct tape on it.
Well, thank you. I really, really hope so, because you know, I'm one of the superintendent mentors for the state of Texas for the charter school division, and I love that. But I'm also one of the senior reviewers for all the charter applications for the Texas Education Agency. That journey, it's somewhat selfish actually, because I get to learn and see who's writing applications and what are they doing innovative, and what could we, you know, teachers and educators, we like to beg, borrow, and steal ideas, because that's what education's about. And so I really appreciate you saying that, and it really is humbling to me and a huge compliment, because if I was just a stagnant school leader and had run a school just like all the others, we might as well not even have it. And so as long as I'm creating, recreating, tearing apart, and making new, we're going to continue to do that at Lighthouse, because that's what it's about for children. They all come unique. They all come different. They have different personalities. They have different needs. Our job is to figure it out and meet them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Oh, we've gotten another comment, and it's a long one. I can't even put it all on screen, but it's a mom named Liza Flores, and she's talking about. So I encourage anybody like on this, it'll show up on the Facebook stream, and you can read her whole comment. But it's a heartfelt testimonial about a daughter who went through an emotional rough patch, she says, and how she felt she got support at Lighthouse instead of being shamed, and that just reinforces what you've been talking about. That, you know, it's this warm, welcoming culture.
That's great. I'm so glad to hear that.
So, okay.
I had a conversation earlier with someone, and they said, we're jokingly saying, you know, one day they want their name on a building or a statue downtown San Antonio. I just want my name carved on the hearts of every kid here at Lighthouse. And so I think we're doing it one day at a time, one step at a time, sometimes one mess up at a time. But we definitely know what we're doing with kids, and we're going to continue that journey and to do anything. So thank you for that compliment. That's really, really nice.
Yeah. So this is where I always try to close out with the call to action, with the details. So I want to remind everyone that the blog post, the link is in the description of the video. But I'm going to ask you to talk about how families can get their kids enrolled if they've been listening to this video and they think, wow, this sounds like something that my kids could benefit from, right? So whether they're 3 years old up to 9th grade, you've got spots in the current school year in every grade, and you're enrolling for the next school year.
Yes, ma'am. So we have current open enrollment status, all grade levels. pre-K 3 through grade 9. And then we also are pre-enrolling for the 21-22 school year now. We're very fortunate in that we do have a large seat cap here at Lighthouse and have not filled it. So we don't really have a need of a waiting list. We take every student that applies. And so right now you can have the option of coming by the campus to fill out paperwork, or you can go to our website, www.lighthousesa.org, click on the Register Enroll Now button. It's active for digital enrollment and registration. You can also, on the same website, email for a tour, and we would gladly walk you through the school, sit down, spend time with you, talk to you about the programs, talk to you about your child, how we can meet their needs, and all of those are online. But we are still an old-fashioned school. We're a neighborhood school. You show up at the door and knock, the door's going to be open. If you call that number, we're going to answer the phone. And so any of those avenues are available to all our families, because we don't want the digital divide to be the one thing stopping you from coming. You can also email us. We have a generic email right now during COVID, and it's COVID19@lighthousesa.org, or you can just email me directly, donald.mills@lighthousesa.org. All of those avenues are available to you. You can reach out to our social worker, Erica Martinez. She would gladly spend time with you, give you a tour, talk to you about the school, anything you need. We're here to serve.
Yeah, it's that welcoming attitude. It comes through in everything that you all do.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's been just such a joy to like learn more about what's happening at Lighthouse, and I'm looking forward to seeing, as time goes by, like, what new programs you add, like, these new high schoolers, like what do they come up with? What are they asking for? I love seeing the artwork that the students are making. I borrowed some of those photos for the blog post, and I mean, yeah. And someday I will come and visit the campus and see for myself.
We know. Just be safe and be secure out there in these days, and happy holidays to everyone.
Happy holidays. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Inga. Good to visit with you.
Okay.